For more on this, I am now joined by Joe Macaron, who is a political analyst at the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. Joe, many thanks for joining us here on TRT World. Let's start with Donald Trump. Do you think that this entire Jerusalem saga has backfired on Trump?
It did backfired on the U.S. Obviously, it's a sad day for the U.S. diplomacy, what happened in New York. It's unprecedented, this amount of isolation. But for him at home, he's playing to his base. So it's not a bad thing necessarily, because you have an alliance now between little bit the evangelical base and the pro-Israel base. And that decision was meant to please them as a campaign promise. So yes, at his base, maybe he gained some for the election in the U.S. But on the international level, as I said, it's a sad day for the U.S. diplomacy.
So you think the U.S. might have gained, Trump might have gained. What have the Palestinians gained? Because this vote was non-binding. What impact does it have on the ground?
I mean, the problem is neither Trump decision nor the reaction of the General Assembly today are binding or change the reality on the ground. The revolution should be more international, should be more a product of negotiation. But we are now having a diplomatic back and forth. There's no victory only but by nullifying morally the Trump decision. So Palestinians don't gain much in that, besides that they have rallied the world around their cause. But in both instances, there's much eventually or ultimately what happens on the ground, whether we see violence, whether we see back to negotiation, which I highly doubt. So it's mostly just a way to contain the Trump decision.
You say back to negotiations, which you highly doubt. Why do you say that? My understanding is that there's some Palestinians who actually see this as a step forward, because you no longer have perhaps the U.S. in that driving position for a peace process. Maybe someone else can now take that reign.
Yeah, this is a difficult issue. First, Israel will not accept anyone to play a role beside the U.S. They had this veto a while back, and since decades now. The French tried a few years ago. They stopped them. So basically, now the Israelis don't want anyone beside the U.S., and the Palestinians don't want the U.S. anymore because they see that they're no longer an honest broker. That's the first challenge. The second challenge: the Israeli government is not ready for peace. It's a very Israeli wing government. If Netanyahu take any step in that direction, his government, his fragile government or his fragile coalition going to fall apart. So he's very worried about this, and he thinks Israel is not ready to compromise now. The Middle East change, and they want to keep the status quo. And then you go back to the Palestinian. You have a very weak Palestinian leadership. You have also weak deal with Hamas now. You have still divide between Gaza and the West Bank, which is very difficult to reconciliate. So the Palestinians are not ready to take the step. And then the fourth point is the peace deal that Kushner and Trump and their aides presented now, no Palestinian leader can accept, because it's going to lead to chaos and turmoil at the West Bank. It's a very weak compromise, only a small part of the West Bank. So the repercussion of those Jerusalem decisions, not only on the Palestinians, is going to go beyond across the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is going to have to be pressured, Egypt. So we are now in a very transition in the Middle East, where the Palestinian issue is again at the center of Arab politics.
Joe, really interesting to hear your thoughts. Joe Macaron, a political analyst at the Arab Center in Washington, D.C.